Whether you're cooking in the wee hours of this Thanksgiving morning or chowing down on your first, second, or hell, even your 10th serving of all the good food and treats, thank you so much for making us a part of your day here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. We're going to answer a few listener questions. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello. It is Thursday, November 24th, 2022. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. This is Ty and Gonzales. I love Thanksgiving. And Colby for the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. The link as well as our social accounts is in the description below. Should be a pretty quick show today. We've got some leftover questions from Monday's Mailbag episode that we're going to get to, and then we'll be on our way. So let's just hop right into it. Our first question comes from Rick, who says, "Hey guys, love your show." Thank you so much, Rick. Rick says, "My question is, what happened to Robbie Ray at the end of last season, and can he fix it?" So, Colby, very simple question. Can Robbie Ray fix himself?
Yeah, sure. Why not? He was very good for the vast majority of 2022. The big struggles came right at the end. Unfortunate timing in that aspect. Ray really had two stretches where he struggled quite a bit. One was from, kind of late April to mid to late May. And the other, unfortunately, was in October in his last handful of outings. So it for, 25 of his 32 starts or whatever, he was very good. Just, bad timing on that end. But his fastball command, he just kind of lost it, and the slider really flattened out on him. Didn't have the same bite that it used to. So when you're a fastball slider pitcher and you don't really have either pitch, you can't make it do what you want, you're going to get hit around. And that's exactly what happened to Robbie Ray. But Ray has a history of, tweaking and grinding and making necessary changes. We've already seen him do it. We saw him do it in Toronto to turn himself into a Cy Young Award winner. We saw him do it last year when he added the two-seamer. So Robbie Ray is a tinkerer. He's a grinder. He's got to put a rough end to his 2022 season behind him. It's kind of the beauty of baseball really, is that eventually your struggles will end. The calendar turns. It's start of something new, and you get to go into spring training and really try to pitch as well as you did for a majority of the season, for the entire season. And if Robbie Ray does that, then he's a very strong number 3, probably a number 2, and at times will look like an ace. So I have high confidence in Robbie Ray that he'll get this fixed.
Yeah, I think for him, really, it was a confidence issue because, you talk about the slider flattening out. I mean, he really didn't have an out pitch. He wasn't able to miss bats when he really needed it the most, especially against righties, right, with that slider. It just wasn't existent for quite some time. And so I think that kind of built and snowballed, especially once it kind of got away from him again towards the end of the season. And then he goes into Toronto, to his former ballpark, playing against his former team, pitching against his former team for the first time since he signed with the Mariners, because, of course, he wasn't able to make the trip up to Toronto the first time. And just craps the bed, right? Like, no one, it just had an awful appearance, gives up a couple home runs to Teoscar Hernandez. The crowd's chanting, "Robbie, Robbie," all that stuff. And that's gonna do something negative to a guy's psyche. And, the mental aspect of things is an important part when it comes to pitchers, especially later on in the season. And then, 3 days later, he's asked to do something that he hasn't done all season. First of all, to get ramped up in that quick of fashion, but also to pitch out of a bullpen role. And, oh, by the way, you got to go get the most important out in Mariners history of the last 20 years against one of the best hitters in all of baseball. And lo and behold, he can't. against Jordan Alvarez, who hits that 3-run home run, and that's really it for Robbie's season. Of course, he made an appearance in Game 3 of the ALDS, and towards the end there of that absolute slog, and had a pretty good outing. So hopefully that builds a little confidence back for him, just to end the season on not necessarily a high note, but a more positive note than where he was the last 2 outings. But yeah, I think it's it's really just a confidence thing for him, and the thing that really will probably heal him the most is just time, right? Time away from the game. Just enjoy the off season, enjoy some time with his family, and work on some things during the off season. And I think once we get back to spring training, Robbie Ray is going to be a bit more refined and a bit more a bit more focused and ready to go for 2023. Which leads into our next question here from Antonio, who asked, what can we expect out of Robbie Ray next year? Is it reasonable to expect a bounce back, or is he just destined to be our number 4 starter? So Colby, you kind of already touched on this, but what can we expect from Robbie Ray next year?
Yeah, I expect Robbie Ray to essentially be a really good mid-rotation starter. That doesn't mean that he won't also be your number 4, which is pretty exciting. But it's if Robbie Ray's your number 4 starter, it's not going to be because he's pitching like a number 4. It's just going to be because the 3 other guys are better, which is certainly in the realm of possibility. So, I would expect Robbie to come back next year. He's going to put up his 10, 11K per 9. He's probably going to walk around 3.5 guys per 9, and probably throw up some sub 4 FIPS, and we'll see. Like I think he's still a number 3 starter. I think that's what the Mariners paid him to be, and I think for essentially 75% of the season, that's exactly who Robbie Ray was. And there were some stretches in there where he was, flat out dominant. So I expect to see a lot more of that. I don't really have any concern about Robbie Ray entering 2023. I think it's important just to remember how good he was for about 4 months there. So if Robbie Ray does end up being the Mariners number 4, it's probably because Castillo, Kirby, and Gilbert are all pitching like number 3s or number 2s or better. So it would probably be a good sign.
And maybe
if Robbie Ray was actually your number 4.
Yeah, maybe they land a starting pitcher this offseason, Kodai Senga. Maybe one of the veterans like Nathan Eovaldi or someone like that. Maybe someone like that out pitches him, and that's a really good thing for the Mariners. So. Yeah, at the end of the day, I'm not too concerned about Ray. Like I said, I think we're going to see a refined Robbie Ray once we get back to spring training, and one that's ready to produce. So we got more questions coming up in just a moment, but real quick, a reminder, this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number 1 source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. We've got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you so much for making us your first listen on this Thanksgiving Day. So let's hop back into our questions. Well, real quick, just to pull back the curtain a little bit, we're recording this on Tuesday. So if anything has happened between when we're recording this and Thursday, we may have gotten to it on our Wednesday show, or we'll get to it on Friday. We'll also probably do some Fan Fiction Friday stuff and all that, but we'll let you guys know about all that on our social platforms at LO_Mariners on Twitter. You can check our YouTube page as well. We post some updates on there, all that good stuff. All right. So next question comes from Baseball Nightly. What do you think would be a fair trade to go get Colton Wong? Also, who would maybe be an off-the-radar guy you guys would like to see come in at second through trade or free agency? So let's first address the first part of this question. What would it take to go get Colton Wong? What would be a fair deal, a fair return for the Brewers?
It's a little tough to say. The Brewers are a team, or the definition of a mid-market team. They act like it. And they have some payroll issues that they need to address. They have, I think, 19 guys going through ARB. I think they've only non-tendered a couple of them. And they're getting to the point now where they're either going to have to, extend or trade Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff. And both those guys are going to be expensive, and they've already got so much money getting eaten up by Christian Yelich, who's not performing worthy of the contract. So, it really comes down to what do the Brewers want to do in 2023, and where are they trying to save money? Because Wong's $10 million is a pretty easy way to save money. And also, I believe he has a $5 million deferred bonus. So I think the Brewers are technically on the hook for $15 million towards Colton Wong. It's a lot for the Milwaukee Brewers, and they have some options up the middle. They have Willy Adames, who's also making some money this year. They have Urias. They have options in the infield. So if Colton Wong is more of a quote-unquote salary dump, which I don't know if they would view him as that, but it's essentially what he is, then the Mariners are going to get him for something pretty cheap. I would imagine for 1 year of Colton Wong, honestly, I think, you're looking at probably a top 15-ish, back into the top 15 prospect, maybe somebody outside your top 25 as well. You're really not talking about much here, I don't think. I think, at most, at the high end, we're talking about, Perlander Baroa maybe, but I don't even think it's going to cost that. I think you're looking at, maybe something like Juan Pinto and
I'm going to call my shot here, actually.
Oh, okay.
Zach DeLoach and Joseph Hernandez.
Okay. Well, we'll see. Fernandez was not he is required to be on the 40-man. Not required, but he is Rule 5 eligible, I should say. So we'll see. But yeah, I think that's pretty close to right, because it's really tough for the Brewers to pretend they have leverage here when they owe him $15 million and they don't want to pay him $15 million. So, and honestly, the Mariners are probably going to get some money from Milwaukee for that package. So yeah, it's not going to cost a ton, which is why I think the Mariners are interested, on top of Wong being just a, really pretty good player. So I think that's why Wong makes a lot of sense. He's going to be relatively cheap to acquire, pay, his salary doesn't really matter to the Mariners. And he's a good player. So yeah, I really don't think it's going to cost all that much. I don't think you're going to look at the trade cost of Colton Wong and be like, wow, that's right. I'm not a big fan of that. So I think you're just going to look at it and be like, yeah, okay. Like, kind of like what Adam Frazier went for last year, right? Like Ray Kerr and Corey Rozier. Interesting guys, but
yeah,
neither's a guaranteed major leaguer. So
it's probably going to be less than that, because Frazier's contract situation was a bit more favorable for the Padres, whereas like you mentioned with the Brewers, it's not as much here with Wong, even though that they did pick up the option on him, the $10 million option on him. Yeah, like they probably did that because they know that they can get at least something that's interesting for him. And I think that, a Deloach Hernandez package, that's pretty interesting. There's a lot of folks that are really high on Joseph Hernandez, and, Deloach is a guy that's close to the major league level, fairly close. Needs to start producing a little bit better than he has as of late. But he's someone that's probably going to be a fourth outfielder at the major league level, might provide some value and might have a better chance to actually play in Milwaukee. So we'll see. There's a bunch of different combinations, but I think that's generally the range that's going to land you Colton Wong. Next question here comes from Vanessa, who says, with the potential loss of clubhouse leaders, examples being Marco to trade, Haniger signs with another team, who steps up into those roles? We saw how important it was when Santana came in and turned team attitudes around in the clubhouse and on the field. So, I think there's a lot of candidates. Some of them have already established themselves as leaders, like Cal Raleigh and J.P. Crawford. And I think, we're seeing some growth out of some other guys like Julio, right? Julio, Julio adored Carlos Santana. I'm sure took a lot of notes from how Santana led, and will apply that to how he leads in the future. Tom Murphy's a big clubhouse leader that's already been established. So, I don't think that they're really short on that. I don't think that even if they do, end up trading Marco, which is still kind of a big if because of the money that's attached to him, and who knows what you might be able to get for him if anything. Who knows who's actually going to be interested in him, all that. Even if you lose Haniger to free agency, which is starting to look more likely by the day. I think they're pretty good on that. Is there anyone else that comes to mind in terms of taking on a leadership role here?
It's interesting. Haniger is very much a quiet leader. Like that's kind of his role. Marco's very much the same. They lead by example. So it's not like they're missing the big, rah rally around me type of guy. And like you mentioned Julio, Tom Murphy being back is going to help. That is part of Murphy's reputation. And I mean, we can't forget Eugenio Suarez and how much the clubhouse loves him. Like, I don't think it's going to be an issue really at all. And Scott Service has created a culture that allows players to be themselves and for leaders to step up when they're needed. And so I really don't think it's a concern. I don't think it's something that Jerry is has entered the offseason with thinking about at all. It's not like, we can't trade Marco because we're going to lose Mitch because now we don't have any leadership or anything like that. He doesn't care about that. He has it. He knows he has it. And so, I think Cal Raleigh's probably the big one to step up. And we started to see that at the end of last year. Bullpen guys, pitchers really can't be that guy for teams because they just don't play every day. It's typically the everyday players that you want your leadership positions to come from. And we just talked about Cal Raleigh and Tom Murphy and Eugenio Suarez and Julio and JP. Like, you're going to be fine. It's not a concern.
Yeah, Eugenio Suarez is another great call there. He's someone that clearly took on a bigger leadership role as the season progressed, and I mean that whole clubhouse loves him. I think Teoscar Hernandez is going to be another guy that the clubhouse rallies around. Just because of the personality and all that. We talked about that when they acquired him on our show that day. So, again, I think the Mariners are in a really good spot when it comes to leadership. Next question here comes from Hayden. Says, love the show, guys. Thank you so much, Hayden. At which point do you see the Mariners giving Adam Frazier another shot if they don't land a bigger name, or is there someone in-house that you would rather see at second base? Hayden, to be quite frank with you, I don't think we ever get to that point. Mostly, honestly, I think this becomes a moot point because Adam Frazier ends up signing relatively quick. It seems like the Cubs are really interested in him. I've heard the Cubs quite a bit for Frazier, and he seems pretty open to taking on a utility role. And the Mariners,
Detroit, is another team I've heard.
Yeah, and the Mariners have Sam Haggerty. They have Dylan Moore. I don't think they're trading either one of those guys. And, they're going to find a second baseman. They're going to find a second baseman that's not Adam Frazier. Whether or not it's one of the top shortstops, it'll be, it'll be a Gleyber Torres. It'll be Brandon Drury. It'll be someone like that.
Yeah, you just can't stick to the status quo at second base. It wasn't good enough last year.
That reminds me, by the way, we did not answer the second part of Baseball Nightly's question.
We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah. We'll get to that in a moment.
You can't stick to the status quo at second base. It didn't work. You had like a 74 WRC plus or whatever last year. It's not good enough. You have to get better there. There's no guarantee or really probability that Adam Frazier is going to be, significantly better than he was last year. So, you can't do that again. You're trying to catch the Astros, not maintain your playoff spot. You have to improve at second base. So Adam Frazier to me never becomes an option because even as a utility guy right now, I'd rather roll with Dylan Moore and Sam Haggerty and whoever they bring in to kind of platoon with those two guys. I would rather roll with that than Adam Frazier. So I think Frazier's probably going to get like 2 and like 15 or something like that. And the Mariners have no business doing that. They should just pay the extra to go get Colton Wong or Gleyber Torres or whoever.
Yeah. All right. So let's U-turn back to Baseball Nightly's. Wait, wrong show. That's a Seattle Overload thing. never mind. We're crossing over here. Let's go back to the Baseball Nightly's question here. Also, who would maybe be an off the radar guy you guys would like to see come in at second through trade or free agency? So I mentioned one of them, Gleyber Torres, but the other guy for me is Brandon Drury, who actually made my top 10 free agents list when we did that, whatever it was, a week ago or two ago. Drury, wasn't as good as he was in Cincinnati when he went over to San Diego at the trade deadline, but he was still, pretty useful. He made a swing change. Like he hit 24 bombs this year, and really no one's talking about him this offseason. And it kind of seems like he's going to end up getting a deal somewhere in the $9 to $10 million AAV range. Like that's really affordable for a guy that hit 24 home runs and got on base quite a bit and hit for, a bit of power outside of the home runs. So I like the Drury idea as a fallback option here. Is there anyone else that comes to mind for you?
I feel like we've talked about literally everybody already, and it's only November. Outside the box, I really don't think you can afford this guy, but if you're looking for a name that really nobody's talking about, Jorge Polanco would be an absolute steal. For Seattle, he's a very good player. For Minnesota, I just don't think he's likely to be available, or that the Mariners are likely to acquire him. So, I like the Drury call. This guy, I wanted them to get in free agency. They didn't, at the trade deadline, they didn't. They have a shot here, but by all accounts, they weren't interested in Drury at all. Now, whether or not that was because they don't like the player, or if he was just a rental and they weren't interested in rentals, I don't know. But I think Drury is a guy who Mariner fans aren't talking enough about. And there are other trade, Brandon Lau, Polanco, Jeff McNeil. It's just hard to see how the Mariners can make those deals happen. So, I really do think that the Mariners starting second baseman next year is going to be either Colton Wong or Gleyber Torres. I just think they make the most sense.
Mm-hmm. All right, next question here. Oops, that's the wrong one. This is our final question of the day. Nebraska Dude 74 asks, what do you think the Mariners have to give up in return for Max Kepler? Max Kepler is a favorite of ours, Colby. What do you think it's going to take to land him? He's got $8.5 million owed to him this year, then a $10 million club option next year.
Yeah, not a ton. It's been pretty widely reported that the Twins would like to trade Max Kepler. They have Byron Buxton. They have Alex Kirilloff. They have Trevor Larnach. They are looking. They have Nick Gordon. They are looking to clear up some outfield space. I think this is a spot where a Chris Flexen and a prospect type of deal makes some sense here. Both are due a little bit of money. The Twins need back end rotation help. They want to clear Kepler off the roster. So it's kind of a major league for major league swap. I think it would probably still cost Flexen and a pretty decent prospect, maybe somebody in the 10 to 15 range, just because the Twins can kind of go get a Chris Flexen in free agency if they want to, but the Twins don't have unlimited funds either. So we'll see what they want to do with Kepler, but I really do think this is a good spot for like a Flexen and Juan Pinto or Michael Arroyo or whatever. Pick a prospect. I don't care which one. Within reason. I think this is a good spot for that. I don't think Marco would be the guy that would get that done. I think it would have to be Flexen, but I think he's going to be reasonably cheap because, again, the Twins have made it pretty clear that they're looking to kind of move past Max Kepler, and I love Max Kepler as a possibility. He's got tremendous power to his pull side. He's a guy whose baseball savant page is red as red can be, which is good. And he's also a guy who's been hurt by the shift. You look at the expected numbers last year, even, they based on his batted ball profile, he should have hit like 260 with a 420 slug instead of what he did. It's just, I think Kepler's going to have a year. He's only 29, I believe, 30 maybe. I think he's going to have a year where he pops 30 home runs again. He's had 1 year where he hit 30 home runs. I think he's going to do it again sometime in the next 2 or 3 years. And you get Gold Glove defense out of him in right field. So I think he's a great fit for Seattle. Oh, and he's left-handed.
Yeah, there you go. So he led all right fielders in outs above average this season with 12, plus 12. So at the very least, you're getting that. You're getting a guy who walks a lot. So that's nice. And like Colby mentioned, the power upside is really something, right? Because like he only hit 9 home runs this season. That's not going to happen again. It's just not going to happen.
I think there's a really good chance that Kepler by the end of the year is a guy who against right-handed pitching at least is hitting like first or second, because he's hitting 260 and he's getting on base 33-34% of the time, and you've added a little bob to the top of your lineup, and you can kind of go Julio, Kepler, Teoscar, Wong, whatever it is, right? It doesn't really matter, but I think Kepler's that type of player. I really do. I buy into Kepler quite a bit. I know others aren't so sure, and I get it. But I think Kepler's going to be a 3 or 4 win player this next year.
All right, well, that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty and Gonzales. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzales. That's DaneGNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. And thank you again for making us your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, featuring the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts, just like us. And with that, have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.